It is Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you this evening. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by a colleague of ours here in News Talk, but much more important than that, she is Ireland's Strong Woman Champion for 2023 and 2024. Sheila Naughton, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You had the trophy with you and everything. It's impressive.
It's impressive. It's clunky though.
You've no problem carrying it around, obviously. That's the easy part for you.
That's the easy part, yeah, one finger. Yeah.
Stupid question to start. How do you become Strong Woman Champion? What do you got to do?
Okay, so the actual competition itself.
Yeah.
So every single Strong Woman or Man event has 5 events in it.
Okay.
So they'll be different in every single competition that you do. And so you train for that specific competition. You would do events days, which is focusing just on the 5 events, or maybe 3 of them because it's quite heavy lifting. And then the rest of the time is building up the strength in the muscles that you will need to do all of those events.
Right.
So there's kind of is a bit of a structure. There will always be a deadlift style event. Mightn't be a conventional deadlift, but there will be a deadlift style. There'll be something overhead. There'll be moving events, which in the competition I just did were farmers. So running with them either side we did 40 metres. But obviously the weight is quite heavy. And then the yoke and sandbag runs, which was the movement event here. And then you have a final one, which is either, which everyone will know, the Atlas stones, which are the ones that all the like strong men, world's strongest man do, those, or a sandbag to your shoulder.
Okay.
So you'll have, that's the general gist of most comps.
And when you're deadlifting, what are you deadlifting?
Okay, well, this is the sore subject because it didn't go well this time
still
round.
won.
Yeah, thank God the rest went well. It just didn't, even though I won, I still want to do as well as I had aimed at for each event, regardless of where I place.
Okay.
So the aim was 150 kilos and I had managed 145 in training and I failed the 150. So wasn't delighted. So my overall that day was 140, but I'd done that before. So that felt like a disappointment.
You're in the under 64 kilo category, so it's still, what are we at, 2.5 times? It's still impressive.
That's and I know, and it's relative. And I mean, there was the women that day in all of the categories, like the deadlifts across the board were so heavy. It was really impressive. You know, you had girls under 73 doing 160, 170 kilos. Like, it's big lifts.
So an event like that, does all that take place over the one weekend? The 5 different events?
Within 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so I suppose often that's maybe why you wouldn't maybe perform what you had done in training, because you won't have done them that close together. But and also the nerves. It was max deadlift. That was our first event. Everybody was still shaking and trying to get the nerves out of them. But everything done in 2 hours.
Wow. Impressive. When did you start taking this sort of training seriously and deciding to enter Strong Woman Championships and starting to do it competitively? How did that happen?
So I suppose it started. I used to go to classes all the time. I was always in the gym. A bit of a slight detour, but a background to me is that I had anorexia and I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. I still say I'm in recovery, but I'm obviously an awful lot better. And back then I had a very, very negative relationship with exercise. I used it to kind of punish my body. I used it to torture myself, really. It wasn't fun. It was just to burn calories and it was really negative. So when I got into recovery, I remember they told me, you actually may never be able to exercise again because you'll always over-exercise. Right. And but I was determined. I was like, but I love exercising, so I need to find a safe way to do it. So started back at the gym just doing these kind of circuit classes and HIIT classes. Again, that wasn't totally healthy because that was also about sweating and burning calories. And one day I missed the class and I went in and my coach, who's still my coach, was doing a strength and conditioning class. And he said, just hop in and try this. I said, oh no, I'm very weak. I'm still very slim, couldn't lift a lot. He said, just hop in and try this. And I loved it. It was slower. It was all about relative to your size and your weight. You lifted things. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And that's really where it took off. It was strength and conditioning. And then COVID came along and I continued to kind of do lifting on my own. And I always say I came out of COVID probably the fittest I've ever been. And I was looking around at these girls who were all lifting what I was lifting. They were doing Strong Woman. And I thought I could never do that. But I was lifting the same weights. So after watching one competition of them doing it, I thought, sure, I'll jump in and give it a go. And my first competition was actually Ireland's Strongest Woman about 3 years ago. Sure, I obviously came last. Like, I think I even had a run in time. Did I train for maybe 5 or 6 weeks? But that was the start of it.
Coming last in Ireland's Strongest Woman, though, still makes you pretty strong.
It was, at the time, I think I was more emotional then because from what I had come from and how weak I was and suddenly I was able to actually, at least stand a chance in this thing. That was the incredible part,
That's still a quick turnaround from COVID, from coming out of that, never having competed, to becoming a two-time champion, to getting from coming last to coming first in the space of just a couple of years. It is a heck of an achievement.
It was, I after the first few losses, I did about 3 competitions in a row where I just didn't do well. Now I went into them kind of knowing I wasn't going to. You know what the other girls can lift. You know where they're at. So you can be realistic. And eventually, one of them I came fourth, and I thought, oh, maybe I'm getting better at this. And actually, I took a break then. So I moved from Monaghan, where there was an awful lot of equipment and places that you could do strong woman, and I went down to Tipperary, and I found it harder there to find places. So there's a lot of equipment gyms don't have. Eventually I did find it. I'd taken a 10-month break, now training consistently, still doing 5 days a week of lifting, and I came back after the 10 months and did Ireland's Strongest Woman. That was last year, and won. But I really shocked myself. I didn't think that's how far I'd come in the year, but the break and the 10 months did me a world good. It also, what I learned in all the times of doing those competitions at the start was, if an event didn't go well, that was me done for the day. Everything else didn't matter. The whole competition was a disaster, and I didn't perform well at the other events, not realising that the way you win is an accumulation of points. So you can come second in every single one and still win. So it was more, so it was, now it's obviously great this time around that, I got a few firsts, so that always sets you up well. But, I think it was realising you have to get over your head a little bit as well to be able to win these often.
And how did you find that change from training for fitness, probably for your mental health, to actually, this is now a competitive thing? There's an end point to your training.
That's a great question. I found that things that had been an issue before, so my disordered eating sometimes still would have played a part. I mightn't have fueled myself properly going into training. I definitely wasn't going to be taking any supplements or anything, any powders that had calories in them, even if they'd help at the start, because I was still in that mindset of working out, losing weight, this kind of cycle that I'd always been in. And suddenly I realised I couldn't perform well. I couldn't lift the weights that were being set on my plan if I didn't fuel myself. So I think that's what changed. It was a shift towards your whole life now has to be, I suppose, more balanced, and you also you have to eat and fuel yourself to be able to do this. So that was probably the biggest change. And also, I mean, consistency was never really an issue for me. I really love the gym. I love going in and doing it. But it was making sure that I didn't, I suppose, get too bogged down in it. I can be really hard on myself, and if something doesn't go well, well, that's it now, throw the towel in. I had to also learn not to do that when I was going towards competitions.
Can you talk to us a bit about your eating disorder? When did the issues begin?
Oh, well, I suppose I would have been diagnosed in 2017.
Okay.
But now diagnosis is funny because you realise when you start to do things like counselling that you're probably sick for a very long time. And that's what I realised. So when I got diagnosed, I was about 22, 23, had just finished college. Everyone kept telling me, you have everything going for you. Like I'd done really well in my course. I was living in Dublin. I was on Gogglebox at the time, and I'd studied drama. So it was like, oh, well, you're on TV already. Aren't you delighted? Like everything seemed great, and I was just desperately unhappy. So when I started to look back then, I actually had showed signs of this from the age of about 7, where I was standing on weighing scales.
Okay.
I was, going on diets as a child all the way up through a teenager. And what's funny is, and some of my friends say it now, they're like, well, look what your body can do now. When I was in secondary school, I was absolutely tortured for being muscly. So I was really badly bullied, particularly focused around the fact that I had muscly legs for a girl. It just happened to be the way that I was. I was very sporty. And I did anything to make them smaller. I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want it to be commented on. So all of that over the years just made me want to shrink myself. And it's funny now, the sport I'm in, having muscle and being strong is so celebrated. But yeah, I think that was kind of the path I went on, the journey I went on to getting very sick. And then, I had 2 inpatient stays in hospital, trips to emergency department and outpatient for 6 months. And I mean, years of work. I still still don't consider myself recovered. But I don't think you have to have that label to be okay. And I'm definitely okay.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Like when you say 7 years of age and weighing yourself, when you reflect, and I'm sure you've thought about this, was that an internal thing or were there outside influences? Was it a gang of friends? Like it's such a young age to even think about things like that. What was going on in your life that, when you look back, that made you stand and start thinking about your weight at that age?
Yeah, so I do know what it was, because I often tell parents this, because they'll say, "Oh, my lad or girl is only 8," and I say, "Well, that doesn't mean it can't happen." So there was always conversations in my house around weight, particularly my granny, who was quite a small lady, and I worshipped her. I thought she was amazing, and when I'd hear these conversations and they talk about her weight, especially if she was sick or going into hospital, I'd think, "Oh, well, I wonder what I am compared to her. So I wonder what my weight is compared to my granny's." And I remember going into her bathroom and she had a scale, and I stood on it and I literally remember the numbers. And so there was an awful lot of conversation around that. And then as I was growing up, I grew up at the time when, it was size 0 was a big deal. All of these celebrities who were very thin, I was obsessed with them, like weirdly obsessed. If they were thin, I wanted to be like them. And over the years, I've been told there is often a biological aspect to it. So obviously, if there was kind of maybe issues with weight in my family, that's part of it. But also then what I was exposed to. So exactly like that, my friends and me being obsessed with celebrities that look this way. And then obviously I went to secondary school and I was told my body didn't look right. So all of that, I suppose, it all comes in together. There's never, unfortunately for everybody, everyone wants to know what like the point was so that it doesn't happen to them. Unfortunately, it is often an accumulation of things. And then when bad things would happen in my life, my go-to was, okay, well, I'll restrict my food now. That's what I'll do. Or I'll go to the gym actually twice today and that'll make me feel better. So a lot of things, growing up, and then triggers, that would be my comfort zone.
Right. It's funny when you say, when someone would say, well, my daughter's 8 and that wouldn't happen. I'd imagine a lot of parents would also think, well, if that was my daughter or my son and there was an issue, I'd know. If they weren't eating, if something, if there was an issue there, I'd spot it straight away.
Yeah.
Like when you were a teenager and you were going through that, were you able to keep it under wraps? Were people aware that there were issues, or was it a shock to everybody?
So we're the best liars, absolute best liars, until it's so obvious we can't hide it anymore. So 2017 is the time when my dad saw a photo and went, "Oh my God, there's a problem."
What age are you then?
22.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this has been going on a long time.
Yeah. And up until then, I did eat. I just ate carefully. And I would go through phases of being on diets and not being on diets. So I didn't acknowledge that was an issue. Sure, wasn't everybody doing it? Wasn't everybody on a diet? And wasn't it normal to just randomly cut bread out? Like, so I justified it as well. So I never went to anybody saying there was an issue. Even when I spoke about the bullying to my mother as I was sick, she said, "Why didn't you tell us? We would have gone to the school, we would have done something." But I didn't know it was bullying. I thought that was slagging that you get as a teen. So there was a lot of denial on my part that meant that I hid it. But as it did get worse, I would hide from people. So you wouldn't see me as much. I mightn't go to an event. And like that with parents saying, I would know my child. My parents feel so much guilt that they didn't spot it. But I say, but how could you? Sure, I masked it. I pretended everything was fine. I ate in front of you. We're very manipulative when we're unwell. And even when the sicker I got, the more manipulative I got, and the more in denial I got. So yeah.
So you talk about going to college then, and being very successful. How did it affect your school years?
Anybody who knows someone with an eating disorder, I guarantee, will tell you that they're a high achiever.
Okay.
Like, the girls I met when I was an inpatient, they were the people who would be president. Like, they were incredible people who were so successful and had so much going for them. But it's that perfectionism that drives you often the way it did with me. Like I said to my dad, if I could channel my willpower into something other than being thin, oh my God, I'd have anything I wanted. But I just channeled it in the wrong way. So, it was like, I'm going to be thin, so I'm going to be the thinnest. So during college, all of my determination, it went into my academics, or it went into being the partier and being like the first one on the dance floor. So I just gave everything my all, and I was able to ignore the eating disorder, even though the voice was kind of there in my head, I was able to put it to the side enough to get through college. And it's like that the minute I got through what I needed to get done and I got my first class honours, it's like everything fell apart. It was like a switch went, and it was literally that 5 months later after finishing my dissertation that I ended up in hospital.
Okay.
Yeah. So I could only keep it going. Do you know when you go home at Christmas and suddenly you get a flu because you've been working flat out all the way up to Christmas? It's like that's what happened to me.
Okay. And those 5 months, what happens during those 5 months?
I was like an absolute spiral that I could not get out of. So my behaviours just got worse and worse. I mean, the restriction, the exercise, the lying, the not going to things, just losing weight. I mean, so much a week I couldn't stop it, and I wasn't going to be able to pull myself out of it anymore.
And were you withdrawing yourself all the time, more and more?
All the time. If anything got in the way of me exercising or not eating, I didn't want to do it.
Okay.
And you couldn't talk to me. There was no speaking to me, and it eventually got to a point where I arrived home from the gym at 12 at night because I was in a 24-hour gym, and my parents were at my house in Dublin, and they said, "We're taking you home. You're not getting to control this anymore." So I just had to have it taken out of my hands then. Yeah.
And when you go home that night and over the following days when you're having to sit down and have the conversation you don't want to have, I'm sure, are your parents at that stage learning for the first time all these things going back over the previous 14, 15 years that you've gone through?
No, they're saying, how do we save you now?
Right.
Because they were like, you're dying in front of us. We're watching our daughter die. And they said, we don't know what to do. And I said, okay, what do you need me to do? And they go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, got the referral letter, put it in my drawer.
Are you saying it with that tone at the time of like, I'll do it. Let me just get through this and go back to living my life the way I want to live it?
It was like, how long will I have to do this for? 5 weeks, is it? Grant. And then will I be better? Okay. And everyone can stop being so dramatic. Like, I thought everyone was being over the top. And I said, right, I'll do what you need me to do for you.
So you don't realise during that spell of 5 months where you feel now that you were spiralling, there wasn't the recognition yourself of something needs to change here?
Yes, but I didn't actually want to do the work.
Okay.
So I knew I'd left my job. I knew I had very little life. But how dare so the voice then is telling you, how dare they try and take me away from you? So don't let them take what you have, and what you have is this eating disorder. What you have is being thin. Like, don't let them steal that. And so you're kind of fighting it. And it's always very funny when you go into inpatient and you're an adult, unless you're sectioned, which I wasn't, you go in voluntarily. And they were like, are you voluntarily coming in here? And I was like, I suppose I am. Like, you're not, but you do. So, I mean, what you're asking there about me not accepting it, I went in for 5 weeks and did nothing and got sicker and got thinner. And the hospital were like, she's not ready. It was like the alcoholic who doesn't actually want to put the drink down. I came back out, had the worst Christmas of my life up to 2018, and suddenly I got the moment in 2018, and it was just coming up to New Year, and I thought, oh my God, I'm so sick, I need to change. And I went in for 12 weeks, and that's when it really started, and that's when the recovery journey properly started.
Yeah, so you have your moment of realisation yourself. The following those 12 weeks, the months that follow, like, I'm sure now you can look back and think, the best thing that had probably ever happened to you, but incredibly difficult at the time.
I wouldn't change what happened because I think I am where I am today because of it, and I think I'm probably the person I really am, which sounds a bit cheesy, but but I would never want to relive it. I never want to go back there. It was I have a diary, and I know I wrote in it that I never have to do day one again in that, because day one was the worst. I never wanted to do anything like not be here. I thought it would be easier, but I never was going to take action on that. But that first day in hospital was the first day I thought it'd be so much easier if I just could close my eyes now and not go through this. But I did go through it, and part of me thought, and I think about it actually when I'm competing, which is funny. I think if I can do this, this will be the biggest achievement of my life. If I can get over this is such a big achievement. So when I'm competing now and I have to do something and I'm nervous, and I'm like, you literally beat anorexia. Like, you're actually grand. Like, you will be able to do this and you can take on. So I do feel like I can take on a lot now and deal with a lot because of it, but I don't want to relive it.
Yeah. Like, Jesus, a lot in that. Like, it's so important. We obviously talk a lot about, girls in sport and the importance of it now. And, like, the importance of being athletic. And, you know, you're not talking that long ago where actually that was looked down upon for schoolgirls, that actually being athletic was not seen as a good thing. Like, geez, you really hope that's changing.
I sometimes say, while there's still body standards and there's still girls who want to look like a Kardashian and have a certain waist and a certain bum, there's something to be said for the amount of young girls that say to me, oh, I wish I had muscly legs like you. That still shocks me, that someone would want that someone thinks that is in any way attractive or a thing to admire, because I was so ridiculed for it. But I am so happy that there is, and I'm not saying for all, but for an awful lot of women, there is a focus on how strong you are, and being athletic is admired. Like, I wish maybe things might have been a little bit different if that had been how it was for me. I do still say, though, there's still a huge amount of pressure on women in sport and to look a certain way. Like, how many girls do you see going out with the tan on their legs to play football? So that's still a pressure. And it's probably still things that we and parents and things like that have to watch. But I do wish that I hope that being strong continues to be applauded. And something about strong women, I have to say, like, you go into this room and there are all these different weight categories, and there are women of all shapes and sizes, like the smallest, most petite girl in the room to women who are so strong and have been doing it years. And you suddenly feel like, God, nobody cares what my body looks like. Like, literally no one cares. They're going, what did you lift? And there's something lovely about that.
In saying all that, you know, when I was reading up on your story and, you know, what you've come through so brilliantly, and I would have thought strong woman would be the last thing that you would be getting into, and that it would actually cause an awful lot of concern for your family, that something, again, where it is from the outside about your body, and that there's a real discipline needed around eating and what you put into your body and how you shape your body. Was that a concern for your family, for people around you, when you said that? Because, again, you talked there about coming home from the gym at midnight and your parents been there. This is the type of thing where you'd be very tempted to be in the gym at midnight. Yes,
so I know that they were worried when I first started going back to exercise. I told them I always would. But I suppose what they had to learn was that, I mean, look how sick I got and they couldn't stop me. So if I was going to go down this path and do it in an unhealthy way, they really couldn't stop me, whether they wanted to or not. However, what they did do was they would ask questions. Is that good for your back? Is that okay? Are you eating to be able to fuel that? And actually what they learned was, once I was kind of given a bit of power to, you know, go to the gym and do this and kind of take control of it myself, rather than constantly being told, because I was being told for so long by medical professionals or my parents or people what to do, that I am more willing to do things when it's me who makes the choice. The thing that does get me is the weight categories, and it's often why I don't continue on. So I'm now through to UK's strongest woman. That's an unusual thing to be through to, but England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. And one of the reasons, and I would love to challenge myself, I would love to try and do the weights, I would love to go up against women, you know, over there. But that's 13 more weeks of weighing myself every day, of watching my food every day, of feeling like I literally cannot slip. And then the stress of having to possibly do, like I did this time, a water cut or a weight cut. I don't know if it's safe for me to do that continuously. But that's a choice that I make, and it is something that my parents will check in on to make sure I'm okay with it.
Look, you're clearly taking a huge amount of personal responsibility for what's gone on in the past and what's going on now and what will happen in the future. But, you know, you used earlier like words like punish and torture that you could use for the past and what you obviously need to put yourself through now as well. Are there professionals you talk to around that to make sure that, you know, like talking about weight cutting, which, you know, we often speak about with boxers, and like how unhealthy that can be.
Horrendous.
So again, to have come through an eating disorder, to even have that sort of vocabulary in your daily life, how do you deal with that?
Well, firstly, the one thing I will say is every single time I have to do a weight cut, I turn to my dad and say, how did I do this for months on end? Like, I can't believe I didn't eat properly because that week is awful. So it kind of reminds me why I can't go back there, because it's miserable. And he was like, well, do you not remember how sad you were? He was like, you were as sad 24/7 as you are this week. So it reminds me and kind of encourages me not to go back there, because it does not feel good anymore now that I'm so far past it. But it is it is unusual, yes, for me to have to even discuss it and for people to even know what weight category I'm in, because for so long I wouldn't tell anybody what my weight was at all. But I do think I have a hand on it. However, I don't do my own food because that's something I am entailed. So I have a nutrition coach who she deals with specifically women who are in like strong woman. She also has had disordered eating herself, so can actually understand when it. So funnily enough, it took an awful long time for me to trust her. Not because I didn't trust her, but because my eating disorder voice was like, she's trying to give you too much food. So, because she got that, we worked well together. But I have tried before where I've thought, okay, well, I can just do my plan myself, and I can't. My head doesn't allow me. But if someone gives me the food to eat and tells me what to do, I'm obedient. So I'll do it. Similarly, I have a coach who does my strong woman plan, and he makes sure that I have rest days. Now, I really do need them, but in the past I wouldn't have allowed myself to have them. Now I look forward to them. So I make sure there's people around me, and there are, if when I need it, I have a counsellor for any of the eating disorder thoughts. I dip in and out of that. Sometimes I don't need it, but I do make sure there's people around me, and I'm quite vocal. I mean, when things a few weeks ago when it didn't look like I might make weight, I was really, really down, and I was like, I feel awful about myself. I didn't like what I saw in the mirror, but I will say it out loud now. So, and that actually helps. At least people know how to support you or talk to you then.
Like, I guess even the term strong woman is important, that it's about strength, so you automatically have to fuel yourself, or you're not going to be strong. That even a move away from sort of bodybuilding towards it being around strength leads into that bit of you have to consistently fuel yourself to make sure that you're going to be in the best possible state for the different events you're in. One other thing that when you think about strong women or strong men championships is around that gym culture and supplement culture and other issues that could arise. As you got more and more into it, is that something that has been quite noticeable, that there is a strong, whether it's a doping culture, a supplement culture? Is it, because often it's one of those things you hear, well, every gym you walk into, supplements are everywhere, illegal supplements are everywhere. But I haven't seen it, but then again, are you
looking?
I'm not looking. So, like, is that an issue in these championships? Is there regular testing against? Are there anti-doping measures?
So strong men and women. It's quite well known that there's an awful lot of steroid use within the sport, but there are different federations. So I'm Ireland's strongest natural. So everybody who competed last weekend is in the natural federation. They're all natural athletes. Often it does come to a decision. I've never felt it. So my personal opinion is I don't need titles or want titles enough to take something to make me improve my performance or be able to compete with those people on an international stage. Because that, outside the natural federation, I couldn't reach the numbers that a lot of them are reaching. Okay,
so there is a legal amount of steroids that some bodybuilders can take to compete?
There's different competitions, so not within the natural federation, not where I competed at the weekend. That's tested. It was kind of random testing, and everybody there. There's also sometimes I find you kind of know who's on stuff and who's not. But there is opportunities. I mean, you are more than welcome to go into any of the competitions, and people will be taking different supplements, as we'll call them. But I think it's a decision some people come to when they want to get to the next level or the higher levels or go international. I think outside of the natural federation. But as you say, I've never offered it. I've never seen it in the gym. But that's because it's not something that interests me, so I'm not exposed to it. But I know that it is something that a lot of decisions that a lot of athletes, and actually recently one of a fantastic strong woman who runs a lot of the competitions actually here in Ireland, the Natural Federation, she spoke and did a whole video on the moment she had to choose. So it often is a choice. But I will just say something just really quickly about the culture. Often when you go into a gym and you kind of feel like you're isolated on your own, that's not what strong man or woman is. I've never felt so cheered on and supported by your competitors. Like everyone wants you to lift your heaviest. Everyone wants you to do well. They'd love to win, but they also want you to do well. So there's definitely a big community aspect to it. I suppose a bit like CrossFit or whatever.
In terms of what's next then? So you're a two-time Irish champion. You speak there about the next step in the UK event. but actually that having to go for another 2 or 3 months with the same regime is just too much. What are the ambitions? Are you satisfied with being Irish champion?
I think so, and that might sound frustrating to others who would like to make, because basically you have to make podium to get through to those. That might be frustrating for people who don't make podium and would like to get there. But I suppose we all have our own set goals and ambitions. Mine is to compete in Ireland, and I haven't said no 100% to UK's because it could be a fantastic experience. But the way I always look at things is I judge every single competition based on the events. Because I mentioned I tortured myself with exercise that I didn't enjoy for so long. If I don't like the events, if they don't suit me, and if I can't access the equipment easily, so if I'm going to be travelling 2 hours in the morning and then having to come to work because I have to get the equipment, that's not worth it to me. So the goal now is I'll wait and see what the events are for UK's. If not, often in Ireland they do kind of smaller league events, or they'll do smaller competitions, and we'll see what happens, yeah.
How many hours a day do you train?
An event session would take me 2 hours, but usually an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. Every day?
5 days a week.
Okay.
2 rest days.
Listen, thanks so much for coming in and being so honest.
Thanks for covering it.
Achieving so much. On a less serious note to finish,
Yes.
I have the solution for what is next for you.
Okay.
Gladiators. Gladiators is now the biggest TV show at the weekend. It's back. Bradley Walsh and his son. So, do you remember Gladiators in the 90s?
I'd go just to meet Bradley.
Do you remember Gladiators in the 90s?
Well, I mean, I was a baby, but...
Okay. Well, listen, some of us are a
I
bit
do
older
know
than
of
that.
it.
You do know. So it's back.
Yeah.
And there was an Irish girl on it a couple of weeks ago. She did very well. She won. She through to quarterfinals. But
Would
a
I
lot
take
of the
her? Would I take
competitors
her?
come from the... I think you probably would. I think she came from a CrossFit background.
Okay.
But a lot of them come from that sort of strong woman background. And I think not a bother to you.
Is this a call out? Sign me up.
That's
the next goal.
I don't know when the applications are out for next year, but you put yourself down there.
Yeah.
And that's a nice, handy little goal. Bit of stardom to go with it.
Yeah, that's what I need. I need fame to go with all of this.
Worked perfectly. So listen, we'll be there, number one supporters if it all works
I'll be
out.
back on next year. We'll be
I'm
talking
just
about
throwing
that.
it out there. But listen, thanks so much for coming in. People will hear you on News Talk as well. And if anyone's affected by it, we've been discussing here, by the way, bodywise.ie has a load of information and support about eating disorders. But Sheila Naughton, 2-time Irish Strong Women champion. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.